The Food Fight Within, the key to making peace with your plate. Welcome to Health Elevated, a program dedicated to helping you live your healthiest life possible. I'm Dr. Fowers, and I co-host the program alongside Dr. David Hedges. Today, Kimberly Funk, a dietitian, joins the program. Be sure to stick around for our segment, 1 Minute for 1%. In that segment, Kimberly will share in about 1 minute something you can do to improve your health by about 1%. We believe small improvements over time lead to amazing outcomes. Thank you for joining us.
Kimberly, thanks so much for being able to jump on today. So as Rylan said, kind of in the introduction, you're a dietitian, and Rylan and I, care a lot about health, and we talk about a lot of topics for people to be healthy. And one topic that comes up over and over and over again is what we're eating. And I think in the United States, I suspect in other places as well, we tend to think of, when we think of what we're eating, one of the first things that come to mind is dieting. This concept of dieting, I think we often hear that, many of us in Western cultures live in what we call it, there's some diet cultures. What exactly are diet cultures, and what is dieting in your mind as a registered dietitian?
That's a great question. So the word diet, it's been taken over, right? Diet, typically when people think diet, they think, oh, I'm eating differently to lose weight. When the definition of diet is just what we eat. So giraffes have a diet, lions have a diet, right? It's what we eat. But typically when we're talking about diet culture, we're talking about restrictive eating in order to change the shape of our body.
Change the shape of the body. Should that be the goal of a diet? Because I mean that could be like a good, proxy for some health metrics, but I understand that that's not the end all be all, right? Like there's some people who, maybe shouldn't change the shape of their body, but should still focus on what they're eating, right?
Yeah. So part of diet culture is we have these ideas in the media, in our culture of the ideal body. And in reality, there is no ideal body. We all have different shapes. We all have different sizes. We come from different places in the world have different shapes that are more common. And so people do try to change the shape of their body, but in doing that, that doesn't mean that they're making healthy lifestyle choices. It may feel like that because they're losing weight, but just because you're in a thinner body doesn't mean that you're healthy. And just because you're in a larger body doesn't mean you're unhealthy. And sometimes that attempts to get into an ideal body can lead to behaviors that are not healthy in the long run, or something like a crash diet. So 95% of diets don't work, meaning that there is maybe 5% of people who will maintain that weight loss long term. Most people will gain that weight back and then gain more back. So that up and down dieting cycle, dieting cycle, the yo-yo dieting, that's the word I'm looking for, does not support health. There might be a little bit of health changes at the beginning, but in the long run, it doesn't support our health.
So you would argue then that healthy eating is probably more tied to just sustainable, long-term healthy foods, nutrient-dense foods, etc., and less tied to, I guess the health is less tied to your weight, and going all over the place with your weight is fundamentally unhealthy. I think many of us would agree with that. You would say it's probably more important to focus on a healthy diet for healthy living rather than a healthy weight for healthy living. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's correct. So looking at and saying, and then how can I add more nutrient dense foods? So foods that are high in nutrients, like vitamins, minerals, phytochemical, fiber, as opposed that are those that don't have as much. But then also this idea of healthy. So we have this idea of healthy, and we think it means, the perfect half your plate is vegetables and a quarter whole grains and a quarter lean protein. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the healthiest diet. And you can have a healthy diet, not meaning to lose weight, but a healthy, I like to call them food routines. You can have healthy food routines, meaning what you eat routinely, or, sometimes you eat stuff out of routine. You can have that while enjoying those fun foods, those play foods, the foods that we typically see labeled as bad or forbidden or all of those kind of things, right? It's a decadent dessert. Okay, well, it's not evil. It's good, it's tasty, and you can include those with the nutrient dense food and find a food routine that you like where you're also enjoying foods and not just eating things you hate.
So I've heard, talk like this, that you're saying like, paying more attention to eating healthy, less attention to the weight. Is that an indication that the culture is changing? I know you said the culture is kind of about changing your body, but like the work you kind of do you think it's having an impact on the culture and changing it for the better?
And that's hard to say. Like, that's not my area of study of looking how, that we're changing the culture overall. But what we're trying to do as what we call, I mean, you hear them as a non-diet dietitian, weight neutral dietitian. Basically, if we're looking at weight neutral approaches to health, we're not looking at changing people's body, and we're helping people understand that misconception that they are unhealthy because of their body size and they would be healthier if they changed it. We're trying to educate and help people understand that you can be healthy at any size, and it doesn't matter the shape of your body. Yes, there are some factors that contribute, but overall, we can start making those health related behavior changes, and we're more likely to continue doing them if we put the scale on the side or get rid of it completely, because we don't have that frustration of, oh, the scale didn't change, so I'm going to stop eating fruit and vegetables. Everything I'm doing is just not working. Instead, we can say, hey, let's look at this process. Let's be process oriented instead of looking at the outcome, which for a lot of people is weight or change in their body. Instead, saying, how can we look at this process and say, this is a journey. It's a process. Yeah. Okay. So eating vegetables didn't go according to plan. This is not what I was hoping would happen. Well, what can I learn from this? How can I grow? So looking at it as an experiment and saying, okay, well, there's no failure in experiment if I look at what I discover and figure out what can I change to make it a better match next time, and then continue that process until you find something that works for you. So, to answer your question, overall culture change, it's hard. We're up against a lot of things in the media, a lot of influencers and stuff like that. So we're just a small part of that, and we're not as glamorous, right? We're not very glamorous dietitians, right? And so, like, we don't have that draw, and so we're trying to help people understand this a little bit at a time. There are, those advocates that are really advocating for this, that are helping with this, to help educate people and understand. But I work at Intermountain for their Way to Wellness program, which is a diabetes prevention program. So I work with my patients to start that mindset change so that they can start looking and approaching health behavior change from a different perspective that supports them long term and supports them through the ups and downs. And whatever the scale says, that they can continue moving forward and make peace with food and peace with their body and find some body respect no matter where they're at.
I love talking about healthy behaviors, and diet is such a complicated behavior. There's so many aspects to it.
Mhm.
It's just probably one of the most complicated behaviors when it comes to our health. But one thing, so I get a chance to listen to you talk on occasion with a program that we have here where we get to go on walks and hear some insights from you, Kimberly, the dietitian. And one thing you talk about a lot is intuitive eating. And that sounds similar to kind of,
Mhm.
I think, what you were just bringing up. But like, how would you define intuitive eating, and why is that something you like to talk about?
So intuitive eating was developed in, I think the book was first published in 1995. I believe. I'm awful with numbers, so I might be wrong with that. But it's two registered dietitian, Elise Resch and Evelyn Trivoli, came up with this concept based on what they were seeing in their patients from their clinical experience. And since then, they've done a lot of research on there. So basically, what it's looking at, there are 10 principles of intuitive eating. And the first one is to reject diet mentality. So getting rid of that diet culture, that idea that you have to change your body, that you have to be a certain size, that you have to control the shape of your body, and instead looking at making peace with food. I mean, there's a lot of steps within this. There's 10 principles, like I said. It's big. There's this misconception that intuitive eating is just the hunger and fullness diet, which it is not. We do look at internal cues, hunger and fullness. We look at satisfaction factor, which is the hub of intuitive eating. That's the, how am I enjoying this food? Does it taste good? Am I not tasting it anymore? We look at, making peace with your body. So body image, movement. So finding movement that feels good in your body and disassociating movement with food. So that calorie in, calorie out equation that we hear a lot, getting rid of that. And instead of saying, oh, well, I ate this, so I have to move this much because I ate this much, or I want to be able to eat Thanksgiving, so I'm going to go out and do this huge Thanksgiving workout before, instead saying, no, they're not associated. We're not going to say that we're moving to reduce, the amount of, because I ate too many calories. We're saying I'm moving because it feels good in my body and I'm finding movement that I like to do. So for me, I hate cycling. Indoor cycling classes are the worst. I'm not going to do them. I've tried them. I've given honest consent. I'm sorry for those of you who love them. They are not for me. I like other type of movement. So if you're going to sign me up for that, I'm not going to do it. And I like movement. And so finding what works for you with that movement. And there's other principles like food police. So getting rid of those voices in your head, and they're going to be out around, and how to deal with those with people in your life that are the food police, that are telling you, this or that, like you shouldn't do this, you should do this. And so there's all kind of things that we're trying to make peace with food. So ultimately, the goal into intuitive eating is that we can eat according to our body's cues. Our bodies intuitively, we can let them guide us to what we eat and to eat healthy. But we've kind of overtaken that. When we're kids, babies cry when they're hungry, they stop. If you give them a bottle when they're full, they're probably not going to eat it, right? And so looking at how we've kind of lost that, and then we get older and our parents are like, okay, you have to finish your plate. You have to eat this. You have to eat this now. And so we lose that intuitive eating piece where we are eating to what our body wants. And then we develop this distrust of our body in making food related decisions. So, intuitive eating is getting back to that, being able to trust your body, to be able to listen to it, to realize, hey, I'm hungry, I need to eat. Or, you know what, this doesn't really feel good to me, so I'm not going to eat it. It doesn't feel good in my body. Or, hey, you know what, I had a couple bites of cake and I'm satisfied. My satisfaction factor says, you know what, I'm not enjoying this cake anymore. And I'm okay to put it aside because I've given myself unconditional permission to eat, which is another principle, meaning I can go back and pick up that cake in 5 minutes if I'm like, yeah, I really want more. I can even eat it for breakfast tomorrow if I want to. But when we do that, what we find is that people eat less of these foods. Now, there is a caveat to this, is we are finding that intuitive eating doesn't work for everyone. Not everyone's brain is wired the same. So people who are neurodivergent, we're getting a lot more information on people with ADHD and how intuitive eating doesn't work the same way in them or as well in them as it could other people. So it's really looking at it individually. I love intuitive eating, but we really need to look at it at an individual level. So when I work with my patients in Way to Wellness, I'm looking at starting where they're at, helping them along those bumps in the road, thinking out what they want to do, where they want to start, and supporting them there in making small steps instead of making these huge changes, and knowing that some things that work for some people aren't going to work for others. And that's okay. If you've given it an honest try and it doesn't work for you, especially intuitive eating, see if you can find a dietitian that specializes in intuitive eating, that can help you with that and help you just discover, yeah, this is for me. Maybe this is where I need to tweak it. Or, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm one of those people that every time I try to make peace with a food, it's great. I make peace with one food, but then I have to do it with the next food and the next food. And I'm not seeing this idea, the ideal, which is you do it with a couple foods, you give yourself unconditional permission to eat these, you allow yourself to eat these, eventually you habituate to it, which means I don't really want this anymore. You're not sick of it. You're just like, I don't really want this anymore. I'm not enjoying it. I know I can have it. For some people, that doesn't work. They do it for a couple. So let me back up a little bit. Most people, they do it for a little bit for different foods, and eventually they find they naturally start doing it with other foods. For some people, it takes every food. So if that's you, talk to a dietitian. If you feel that it's hunger and fullness cues and you're just eating for hunger and fullness, talk to a dietitian that can help you with these other principles.
Kimberly, this is fascinating. I could sit and listen to you talk about this for a while as I start to understand it more. If I'm understanding things correctly, you're essentially saying that what you eat should be shaped by how you are feeling and what's driving you on the inside rather than how you appear or how you want to appear on the outside. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, but there's a little bit different. So a lot of people think how I feel on the inside is, do I have cravings? If I'm craving something, I should eat it. Or if I'm craving something, it means my body is deficient in that nutrient. We don't really know if that's a thing or not. And so it's not looking at it that way, but it's saying, yeah. So, am I hungry? How much do I want to eat? How much do I need to eat? But then looking at your plate and being able to say, okay, I can stop anytime because I know I can have these for leftovers. Or if I don't like leftovers, I can eat this another day. I can make this. I can go to this restaurant again. You're less likely to eat it, or you're less likely to overeat it in those moments. And then we start this process. What I like to do with my patients is to start the process of adding. So instead of subtracting from life, we want to add. So what's the first thing that happens when you go on a diet? The first thing that happens is I can't eat this. I can't eat that. That's my favorite food, and I'm never going to see it again. Then you go into this last supper, what we call last supper eating, is where you eat as much as you can the day before the diet because you think your people honestly feel they are never going to eat this food again. This is going to be the diet that works, and they are never going to eat whatever that food is again. And so then they don't eat it, they restrict it, and then what happens? You start thinking about it all the time. You want it all the time. You crave it. You try eating other foods so you don't eat that food, and then you end up eating it. And then people say they binge on it. Now, binge is relative term, but they feel like they eat more than they were planning of this food because they restrict it. So that is a food restriction. And now there's some times where there's medical necessity, like that you cannot, like an allergy. Please don't eat peanuts if it's going to throw you in an anaphylactic shock. That is a bad food for you because your body doesn't like it, right? Um, but thinking a lot of people and that there's a whole can of worms you can go into with restricting foods and intolerances and stuff like that. We're not going to go into that today, but that idea of adding it. So if we add it, we're not going to think about it all the time. Or if we add something, we're not going to think about the things that we're not eating and just start where we're at. So looking especially at saying, I'm not going to change my whole routine at once, right? Because it's too
Mhm.
big. It's way too big. The way we've been doing things doesn't work for people. And it's not scientifically backed. This stop eating everything and start eating this is not scientifically backed as a sustainable behavior. And so we want to
Right.
look at things that are. So it's those small changes. So I like adding because you're not changing
Interesting.
anything else. You're adding. So what nutrient dense food could you add? But then also looking at more nutrient dense is relative. So if you're not ready for carrot sticks and celery or you don't like them, maybe you're moving to something a little bit. Maybe you're eating a Twinkie for lunch every day. Maybe you're moving to doing maybe your first step is adding, one of those granola bars that have just as much sugar and all that, but maybe it has a little bit more nutrients. Maybe it has nuts. Maybe it has whole grains in it. And taking that small step at a time. And maybe you don't get rid of the Twinkie. Maybe you eat the two together. And then eventually taking the next step, which would be, okay, what's my next step? Maybe I'm now more comfortable with throwing a banana in there. And these are suggestions. Just because a dietitian
Interesting.
says it doesn't mean it's the way to do it.
So Kimberly, I have potentially a controversial topic to
Mhm.
ask you. So Rylan and I, we spent a lot of time, working with various projects trying to find correlations between healthy outcomes and kind of people's
Mhm.
health of where they are, and we tend to look at a lot of different metrics, and metrics in and of
Mhm.
themselves, they're not necessarily drivers, but they often can be highly correlated, and they can be very useful, but they can be very difficult to interpret in a real life situation. And one metric that we look at pretty frequently is BMI. And this is something that's been known
Mhm.
for a long time. People talk about it all the time. Is BMI at all a metric that you even care about talking about when you're working with patients?
Well, I am required to look at it for my job, but it is not something for most dietitians. We wish we could get rid of it. So here's a little bit of history on BMI. BMI was developed in about the 1830s by a Belgium or mathematician who was trying to find the average man. He wanted to know what the average man was, like height, weight, that kind of thing. So he did all this research gathering data from men, white men, not women, not people from different places, but from, around Belgium, right? So we're talking about European men. So looking at those. And so he wasn't looking at this from hey, let's figure out how to diagnose things or if this makes somebody healthy or unhealthy. He was just trying to answer the question, what is the average man? Right? Where's the average man? And so BMI is a very simple calculation. It takes height and weight, throws them together, and then gives you a number. So this doesn't take into account for your muscle mass. So a lot of athletes are in the overweight or obese category. It doesn't take into account fat distribution. It doesn't take into account genetics, ethnicity, age, or gender. Like I said, women weren't even included. It's the average man, not the average woman. And so we started using this, and insurance companies jumped on it in the early 1900s and stuff like that, and it's just kind of been this beast that's rolling. It just keeps going. But however, when we look at the research for this, it's really hard because we say, yes, a higher BMI is associated with chronic disease. Okay, so we're not gonna get into a whole lot of that, but there are things that make the research tricky. So there are variables that researchers either don't isolate for or are really tricky to isolate for. I don't even know if you can isolate for some of these. So some of those are the social determinants of health. So those are economic stability, education, access and equality, healthcare access and equality, neighborhood and environmental factors, and social and economic content text. So especially older studies didn't isolate for these. And then we have the one that is really tricky, like I said, to isolate, and that is weight stigma. So weight stigma is felt by everyone in this culture. If you are not feeling it, you are extremely rare. And as my husband would call it, a unicorn, right? You're the mythical creature out there. But we can't isolate for this. And people don't even realize they're experiencing health or not health, weight stigma, excuse me,
So what
weight
exactly is
stigma.
weight stigma then?
Great question. So, weight stigma is the idea that you are healthy. It might have to do with your work habits or anything else like that. If you're lazy or whatever, based on your size. And so, this is really hard for everyone. We feel it because we have this ideal body size, which is smaller than most people can get to healthily. And so they say, okay, I'm feeling that because I'm not in that ideal. So feeling that you're not adequate because you're not in that ideal, or your body doesn't look a certain way, or because your body is at a certain weight or shape, that can be part of weight stigma. Also, so anybody can experience this. Even people who are super thin experience this. So what we're looking at is that people in larger bodies, the people we put in that BMI category, that is like hard to see that, right? They go to the doctor and they're like, "Oh, okay, so you're telling me I'm fat, right? Or I'm overweight, or I'm unhealthy, or that I'm lazy," when they see those BMI categories, or when the doctor talks about their weight, "Hey, you need to lose weight," type situation, they feel that stigma. And some things happen because of this. It really affects our weight. It can significantly affect not our weight, our health, and it can affect our weight too, but it significantly affects our health. So it can influence our mental and emotional health. We can see the development of disordered eating and eating disorders. It can increase chronic stress. And then there's internalization of weight stigma. So this is the idea that you believe you're at fault for your body size, that you have failed. And first of all, back to diet culture, a little side note on this is diets are the only product out there that are failed, but people, instead of blaming the product, I mean, if you bought a car and drove it off the lot and it fell apart, you would take that car right back and be like, "Hey, this car doesn't work," right?
Mhm,
This
mhm.
this is not, but they have shifted the blame away from the failed product that doesn't work for people to the consumer. So they're saying, "You're at fault for not following this diet. You didn't have enough willpower. You didn't have it in you, you're not good enough, you're too lazy," whatever this is. So people start internalizing these stereotypes of people in larger bodies or whatever. And a lot of people maybe in smaller bodies, but think they are in a larger body. So, and one side note is that people think laziness is equated with larger bodies. And I can tell you with the people I work with, the majority of them are in larger bodies and they are not lazy at all. If you can do a diet and stick to it, that takes a lot. And it's not because you're lazy that it didn't work out. And then, we see because of weight stigma, we see people yo-yo dieting because they're trying to lose the weight, can only maintain those huge lifestyle changes that are unenjoyable for so long, and then they go back to what they are doing, and because of, metabolic issue or like the way our metabolism affect or reacts to this, they end up gaining weight back. Our body's trying to maintain weight, and so we start seeing that weight regain, and then we'll gain a little bit more.
So, what would be the balance then? I'm thinking about myself here. I'm thinking about the people listening to this. One, if it's not my body size that determines if I'm healthy or not, then how do I know if I'm healthy? And at the same time, how do you balance that with body respect? Like, love your body, but also you can kind of like, I think somehow you don't want to mask the ability to be able to analyze your own health. Y- Do you see what I'm getting at? Like, how do you balance
Mhm.
those?
Yeah, the question is, okay, if I'm in how am I healthy despite my size, right? A lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm overweight, I'm unhealthy." But this goes the same with people in smaller bodies, right? You can have people in smaller bodies that have the same health concerns and risks as people in larger bodies. It just is an individual basis or based on it, individual on where you come from, your genetics, all of those things that I mentioned before, social determinant of health. Um, so I mean, there's always things like lab values, right? Talking to your doctor and looking at, hey, can we run lab values? Looking at, how much do you move or what do you eat? It doesn't mean that you're healthy or not, but looking at how can I make changes to include more nutrient dense foods or move my body more often? Because movement, any kind of movement, so just moving more than you typically do, even if it's your, a task of daily living that you're doing more often, trying to add those back more of those back in, right? So looking at that. And then the other question you asked, sorry, hang on just a minute. Excuse me.
No problem.
Um, is thinking about, oh my gosh, my brain just died.
Oh, the body
You were talking sorry.
respect, self-respect of,
Respect, body
yeah.
respect. Yes, yes. I was like, I had it and it went. So body respect. There is a lot of shame in that weight stigma. There's a lot of shame on how we do our body, how we move our bodies, all of that thing. And there's this idea out there that, if we like our bodies more, we'll treat it with more respect, which is true. However, there is some issues with this movement of love your body. So when I tell people and talk to people and ask them about what they think about, in my weight and wellness classes, I'll say, we talk about body image. We have a session about body image and I'll ask them what they think about the love your body. Like, what does it feel to love your body? And a lot of them come back with, how can I ever love this? It's hideous. How can I ever love this? And that's heartbreaking. right? Like I have a hard time taking care of this because I don't love it. It's ugly, it's fat, it's sloppy, put whatever you in there. They use these really, really critical terms to describe their body. And so, yes, it's okay if you never love your body. So working and turning that into, instead of working to love my body, I can just respect my body. So we can work with people that we don't like, but we respect them as a coworker. We respect what they do professionally, and we can work with them and respect that. Maybe we don't like them personally, and that's okay. So kind of thinking it from that perspective of how can I respect my body in my here and now body, not in the future body I want or the past body I have, but how can I respect it? And when we find that people start working towards respecting their body and showing their body respect, which means giving it its basic needs, right? So affection, uh, food, movement, comfortable clothing, clothes that feel good, not only that are comfortable. So I'm not talking about, wearing sweats all day. If that's what's comfortable and you like those, that's great. But if you hate sweats, find clothes that you feel are nice and that feel comfortable in your body. So when we give it these basic needs, then we're showing it respect. And we find that when people start working towards this, they're more likely to give those needs. And part of those needs are movement and nutrition, eating foods that support their health and that feel good in their body. So some people will self-sabotage and say, punish themselves by
Yeah.
eating foods that they don't like and don't feel good in their body, or that don't feel good in their body. But when they start respecting it, then they realize, hey, this makes my body feel this way. And so I'm
Wow.
gonna respect that and find a different way
I
to
think
eat stuff.
that's really powerful. I think that's really, really interesting thing. But we are kind of at the segment where it's time for you to impart in 1 minute what you want people to know about, proper way to take care of yourself.
Let's get to it. This is the 1 minute for 1%.
Here is my 1 minute for 1%. You are worthy of health, no matter the size or shape of your body. The outcomes of your past attempt at dieting are not your fault. The steps were too big and not tailored to your life. Today, start where you're at by practicing small steps. Reflect on how to add to life instead of subtracting from it. Enjoy and explore enjoyable nutrient-dense foods to add to your current food routine or movement that feels good in your body. Experiment with additions that take less than 2 minutes or maybe even 1 minute, such as adding a minimally prepared vegetable or fruit to a meal or snack you already eat every day. Dance or stretch while standing and waiting for the microwave or toaster. These are just examples. What works for others may not work for you, and that's okay. Brainstorm your own ideas. When you're ready, explore the next thing you want to add. Don't forget to celebrate small wins along the way.
Wow, that is particularly powerful, Kimberly. Thanks so much for sharing that. You've imparted a lot of wisdom. I am going to go ahead and about what that means for me. Taking small things that make me me, and I can take control of my health in small ways. Kimberly, thank you so much. This has been delightful.
You are welcome.
Thank you for tuning in to Health Elevated. If you like what you heard, please give us a thumbs up or positive review. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think by leaving a comment. Check out the Health Elevated podcast on your favorite streaming platform.